The crack of a gunshot echoed across the valley as Olivia Owens ducked behind a barrel outside the general store, her heart pounding so hard she feared it might burst from her chest. Another day in Mineral Point, Wyoming Territory, had turned dangerous, but this time was different. Through the swirling dust, she spotted him, a man slumped over his horse, blood soaking through his faded blue shirt, his hat barely clinging to his head as the animal trotted nervously into town. The year was 1878, and Mineral Point had seen its fair share of trouble since the mining boom began. Olivia had come west 3 years prior, leaving behind a comfortable but stifling life in Boston to make her own way. At 22, she now ran the town's only boarding house, a modest establishment that kept her busy from sunrise to sunset. "Help!" she called out, abandoning her hiding spot as the wounded stranger's horse came to a stop in front of the saloon. Someone help this man. The few townsfolk brave enough to venture into the street after the gunfire approached cautiously. The stranger was unconscious now, sliding sideways off his mount. Sheriff Donovan reached him first, followed by Doc Miller. "Bullet wound to the shoulder," the doctor announced, pressing his handkerchief against the bleeding. "And looks like he took a nasty blow to the head." "Help me get him to my office." Olivia stepped forward. "I'll help," she offered, ignoring the disapproving glances from Mrs. Henderson, the minister's wife. "Not proper for a young lady," the older woman muttered, but Olivia paid her no mind. Between the sheriff and Doc Miller, they managed to carry the unconscious man to the doctor's small office at the edge of town. Olivia followed, carrying the stranger's dusty hat and the saddlebags they'd removed from his horse. "Who do you reckon he is, Doc?" Sheriff Donovan asked as they laid the man on the examination table. Doc Miller shook his head. "No idea, never seen him before." He turned to Olivia. "Check those bags, will you? Might be something to identify him." Olivia nodded and opened the worn leather saddlebags. Inside, she found a few articles of clothing, a half-empty bottle of whiskey, a gun cleaning kit, and a small pouch containing barely enough money to buy a decent meal. "Nothing," she said. "No letters, no identification." The doctor was working quickly, cutting away the bloodied shirt to reveal a nasty bullet wound that had torn through the man's left shoulder. "Lucky," he muttered. "Went clean through. No bullet to dig out." Olivia studied the stranger's face as Doc Miller tended to his wounds. He was handsome, she had to admit, even beneath the several days' worth of stubble and the dirt from the trail. His features were strong, a straight nose, defined jaw, and dark brows that contrasted with hair the color of sun-bleached wheat. "Looks like he's been running from something," the sheriff observed, fingering the man's gun belt. "6 shooters been fired recently." "Or running to something," Olivia suggested quietly. Doc Miller looked up from his work. "This head injury concerns me more than the bullet wound. Took a fierce blow here." He indicated a swollen area at the back of the stranger's head. "Can't tell if he was struck or fell hard after being shot." "Will he live?" Olivia asked, surprising herself with how much she cared about the answer. "Should. But I can't say when he'll wake or what state he'll be in when he does." Sheriff Donovan frowned, adjusting his gun belt. "Well, I need to know if we've got a criminal on our hands or an innocent man. I'll wire descriptions to neighboring towns, see if anyone's looking for him." "He needs care," Doc Miller said, finishing the bandaging. "My place isn't set up for long-term recovery." Before she could think better of it, Olivia spoke up. "I have a spare room at the boarding house. I can look after him." Both men looked at her with surprise. "That's mighty generous, Miss Owens," the sheriff said slowly, "but we don't know who this fella is." "I've got a shotgun by my bed and a lock on my door," she replied firmly. And it seems to me that a man who can barely stand isn't much of a threat." Doc Miller nodded approvingly. "She's right, Sheriff, and I can check on him daily at the boarding house." The sheriff sighed, knowing he was outnumbered. "Fine, but I'm posting a deputy nearby until we know more." That evening, with the help of Doc Miller and 2 strong men from town, the unconscious stranger was moved to Olivia's boarding house and placed in the small room at the end of the hall. It was modest but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small window that overlooked the dusty main street of Mineral Point. Olivia sat by his bedside after the others had gone, studying his face in the soft light of the oil lamp. Who was he? Where had he come from? And what trouble had found him on the trail to their small mining town? "You're safe now," she whispered, though she knew he couldn't hear her. "Rest and heal." For 3 days the stranger remained unconscious, stirring occasionally but never fully waking. Olivia tended to him faithfully, spooning broth between his lips when she could, bathing his brow when fever took hold, and changing the bandages on his shoulder as Doc Miller had instructed. It was near sunset on the 4th day when his eyes finally opened, eyes so intensely blue they reminded Olivia of the summer sky. She was adjusting his blankets when she felt his gaze upon her, and she nearly dropped the water pitcher in surprise. "Hello," she said softly, setting the pitcher down. "You're awake." He stared at her in confusion, his brow furrowed. When he tried to speak, his voice came out as a rasp. "Where am I?" Olivia quickly poured a glass of water and helped him drink. "You're in Mineral Point, Wyoming Territory, at my boarding house. You were shot and brought into town 4 days ago." His eyes widened and he tried to sit up, only to fall back with a groan of pain. "Careful," she admonished, placing a gentle hand on his uninjured shoulder. "You're still healing." The stranger looked around the room, then back at her, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Mineral Point," he repeated, as if testing the name. I don't remember coming here." "What do you remember?" Olivia asked carefully. His blue eyes filled with a fear that tugged at her heart. "Nothing," he whispered. "I don't remember anything at all." Olivia felt a chill run through her. "Nothing, not even your name." He closed his eyes, his face contorted in concentration, then opened them again. The fear had been replaced with something worse, desperation. "No," he said, his voice breaking. "I don't know who I am." Olivia squeezed his hand reassuringly. "I'll fetch Doc Miller. He'll want to know you're awake." She hurried from the room, her mind racing. A man with no memory, it was like something from one of those dime novels she occasionally indulged in. Yet the fear in those blue eyes had been real enough. Doc Miller arrived within the hour, examining the stranger carefully and asking numerous questions, most of which the man could not answer. "It's the head injury," the doctor explained afterwards, speaking to Olivia in the hallway. "Memory loss can happen with such traumas. Sometimes it returns quickly, other times." He let the sentence hang unfinished. "Will he recover?" Olivia asked. "The physical wounds, yes. The shoulder is healing nicely. As for his memory, that's less certain. It could return tomorrow, in a month, or—" He shrugged. "Some never fully regain what they've lost." Sheriff Donovan arrived later that evening, eager to question the awake patient. Olivia insisted on being present, protective of her vulnerable charge. "So you don't remember your name, where you're from, or how you got that bullet in you?" the sheriff asked skeptically after several minutes of questioning. "No, sir," the stranger replied, frustration evident in his voice. "I've been trying, but there's nothing. It's like my life before waking up here simply doesn't exist." The sheriff sighed, rubbing his mustache. "Well, I've sent wires to every town within 100 miles. Nothing yet about a missing man matching your description, but it's early days." He paused. "I suppose we ought to call you something in the meantime." "Sheriff, please," Olivia interjected. "He needs rest, not an interrogation." "It's all right," the stranger said, offering her a faint smile that, despite his condition, caused a flutter in her chest. "I'd like a name, too. Better than being the stranger or the wounded man." The sheriff looked thoughtful. "Well, you were riding a good quarter horse, wearing a quality gun belt, and those boots of yours are hand-tooled. I'd say you're a cowboy or perhaps a ranch hand." "Quinn," Olivia said suddenly, the name coming to her unbidden. "You look like a Quinn." The man tested the name silently, mouthing it to himself. Then he nodded slowly. "Quinn," he repeated aloud. "I can't say if it's mine, but I don't hate it." "Quinn it is, then," the sheriff agreed. "Now for a surname." "Keller," Doc Miller suggested. "It was my mother's maiden name. Sturdy sort of name." The newly christened Quinn Keller nodded again, accepting the borrowed identity as the only one available to him. After the sheriff and doctor departed, Olivia helped Quinn sit up properly to eat a simple supper of stew and bread. His hands shook with the weakness of his ordeal, but he managed, clearly determined to regain his independence. "Thank you," he said when he'd finished, "for all of this. I don't know how I'll repay you." "There's time enough to worry about that when you're stronger," she replied, taking the empty bowl. "For now, you need to rest and heal." He caught her wrist gently as she turned to go. "Miss Owens, that is your name, isn't it? The doctor called you that." "Olivia Owens," she confirmed, acutely aware of the warmth of his fingers around her wrist. "Olivia," he repeated, as if committing it to memory, the one thing he could remember in a void of forgotten history. "I need to know, was there anything with me, anything that might tell me who I really am?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just some clothes, a gun, and a little money. Nothing personal, I'm afraid. No letters or photographs." Disappointment clouded his features, but he nodded. "Thank you for being honest." Over the next 2 weeks, Quinn's physical strength returned rapidly. The bullet wound healed cleanly, and though he still suffered occasional headaches from the head injury, he was soon able to move about the boarding house with ease. His memory, however, remained frustratingly blank. Olivia found herself drawn to the mysterious cowboy. There was something compelling about him, a natural courtesy that spoke of good upbringing, a quiet intelligence in his observations, and a determination to make himself useful despite his circumstances. Once he could walk comfortably, Quinn insisted on helping around the boarding house, chopping firewood, making repairs Olivia had been putting off, and even assisting with meal preparations when her regular help, Mrs. Finch, was laid up with a toothache. "You're quite handy with tools," Olivia observed one afternoon as Quinn finished repairing a loose floorboard on the front porch. "Perhaps you were a carpenter before," he smiled ruefully. "My hands seem to remember even if my mind doesn't. I picked up that hammer like I've held one 1,000 times." He wiped sweat from his brow. "But it doesn't feel like carpentry was my trade. When Sheriff Donovan let me handle his mare yesterday, that felt more familiar." "A cowboy, then, as he guessed," Olivia said, handing him a glass of lemonade. "Maybe." Quinn took a long drink, then gazed out at the busy Main Street. "I get flashes sometimes. Nothing concrete, just feelings. When I hear horses, I feel drawn to them. When I hear a piano playing from the saloon, I feel something, but it's all just out of reach." Olivia's heart ached for him. "It will come back," she said with more confidence than she felt. "And if it doesn't," the question hung between them, heavy with implication. What future could there be for a man with no past? "Then you make new memories," she said firmly. "You build a new life." The warmth in his eyes as he looked at her made Olivia's cheeks flush, and she busied herself with straightening her apron. That evening, after the boarding house guests had retired for the night, Olivia found Quinn sitting alone on the back porch, staring up at the stars. Without a word, she sat beside him on the wooden bench. "I was wondering," he said after a comfortable silence, "if I might stay on here. Work for you to pay my keep until—" He didn't finish the thought. "Until your memory returns," she asked softly, "or until I decide it doesn't matter anymore." He turned to face her. "I can't live in limbo forever, waiting for a past that might never come back." Olivia nodded, understanding all too well the need to move forward rather than dwell on what might have been. Hadn't she done the same when she left Boston? "I'd welcome the help," she said. "But are you sure you wouldn't prefer something more adventurous?" "The Rocking Bee Ranch is hiring hands, I heard." Quinn shook his head. "Not yet. I'm not ready to leave." He hesitated. "To leave the first place I can remember calling home." The simple statement touched Olivia deeply. Home. Her boarding house was modest compared to the elegant townhouse she'd grown up in, but she'd made it her own. The idea that Quinn felt it was home too filled her with unexpected joy. "Then stay," she said, impulsively reaching for his hand. "Stay as long as you need." His fingers curled around hers, warm and strong. "Thank you, Olivia." As spring gave way to summer, Quinn became a fixture at the Owens boarding house. He proved to be invaluable help, taking on tasks that Olivia had previously hired out at considerable expense. The arrangement benefited them both. Quinn had a place to belong while he continued to search for his identity, and Olivia found her business flourishing with the addition of his capable hands. The townsfolk of Mineral Point gradually accepted the mysterious amnesiac in their midst. Some remained suspicious, particularly old Mr. Roth, who owned the bank and seemed to distrust everyone on principle. But most were won over by Quinn's willingness to lend a hand whenever needed and his unfailing politeness. Sheriff Donovan continued his inquiries, but as weeks passed with no response to his telegrams, even he began to accept that Quinn Keller, or whatever his real name might be, was likely not a wanted man. "No news is good news, I suppose," the sheriff told Quinn one July afternoon as they shared a drink outside the general store. "Either nobody's missing you, or nobody's looking for you, both of which suggest you weren't in any serious trouble. Or whoever might be looking hasn't heard your inquiries," Quinn pointed out. The sheriff shrugged. "Wyoming Territory's a big place, that's true enough, but word gets around." Quinn nodded, though Olivia, who was selecting fabric inside the store, could see the shadow that passed over his face. She'd noticed he did that often maintained a cheerful demeanor for others while privately wrestling with the void where his memories should be. Later that night, unable to sleep in the summer heat, Olivia ventured downstairs for a cool drink of water. She found Quinn at the kitchen table, a small object glinting in his hands in the moonlight streaming through the window. "Quinn," she called softly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up, quickly closing his hand around whatever he'd been examining. "Olivia, I'm sorry if I woke you." "You didn't," she assured him, moving to light a small lamp. "I couldn't sleep. It's too warm upstairs." In the gentle lamplight, she could see the strain in his face. "What's troubling you?" she asked, sitting across from him. After a moment's hesitation, he opened his hand, revealing a tarnished silver coin. "I found this in the lining of my boot today. It had worked its way into a tear." Olivia leaned closer to examine it. "It's not American," she observed, noting the unfamiliar markings. "Spanish, I think," Quinn said, "and old, but I don't know why I had it or what it might mean." "A keepsake, perhaps," Olivia suggested, "or payment for something. That's just it, I don't know." Frustration edged his voice. "It could be meaningless, or it could be the key to everything." "But I can't remember." Impulsively, Olivia covered his hand with hers. "It's something, though, a piece of who you were." Quinn's fingers curled around hers, his expression softening. Who I was, he repeated. Sometimes I wonder if I even want to know. What if I was someone not good, Olivia? What if I was running from the law, or worse? I don't believe that, she said firmly. How can you be sure? Olivia met his gaze steadily. Because I know who you are now. A man doesn't change his nature entirely, memory or no. You're kind, honest, hardworking. Those aren't traits that appear from nowhere. The intensity in his blue eyes made her breath catch. For a moment, she thought he might lean across the table and kiss her, and realized with a jolt that she wanted him to. Instead, he gently squeezed her hand. Thank you for your faith in me. It means more than you know. The next day brought excitement to sleepy Mineral Point. A traveling theater company arrived, setting up in the town square and announcing a performance of Romeo and Juliet for that evening. Such entertainment was rare in the small mining town, and everyone was buzzing with anticipation. Will you go? Quinn asked Olivia as they prepared breakfast for the boarders. She hesitated. I hadn't thought about it. We should, he said, his eyes bright with unusual enthusiasm. Together, I mean, if you'd like to. It was the first time he'd suggested anything like an outing together, and Olivia felt a flutter of nervous excitement. I'd like that, she answered, trying to sound casual. That evening, wearing her best dress, a modest blue calico that brought out the warmth in her brown eyes, Olivia met Quinn in the parlor. He'd borrowed a clean shirt and jacket from Mr. Peterson, one of the boarders, and had shaved carefully. With his blonde hair neatly combed and his strong features no longer obscured by stubble, he looked handsome enough to be on the stage himself. You look beautiful, he said simply when he saw her. Olivia blushed. Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself. They walked to the town square together, joining the crowd gathering around the makeshift stage. The night was perfect, warm but with a gentle breeze, the sky above them a tapestry of stars. As the play began, Olivia found herself swept up in the timeless tale of star-crossed lovers. Beside her, Quinn watched with rapt attention, his expression changing with the emotions of the drama unfolding before them. During the balcony scene, his hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers intertwining naturally, as if they'd done so 1,000 times before. When the tragic ending came, Olivia was surprised to feel tears on her cheeks. Quinn's thumb gently brushed one away, the tender gesture almost undoing her completely. As they walked back to the boarding house after the performance, the night alive with the sounds of crickets and distant laughter from the saloon, Quinn seemed troubled. What is it? Olivia asked. Didn't you enjoy the play? I did, he assured her. Very much. But it was strange I knew the story. Olivia looked at him curiously. You remembered it? Yes, I knew what would happen next, knew the lines before they were spoken. He shook his head in wonder. I must have seen it before or read it. That's wonderful, Olivia exclaimed. It means your memories are still there, just hidden. Quinn nodded slowly. It gives me hope, but it also makes me wonder what else I know without realizing it. When they reached the boarding house, they lingered on the porch, neither quite ready for the evening to end. Thank you for tonight, Olivia said softly. It's been a long time since I've done anything just for enjoyment. We should do it more often, Quinn replied. Life needs moments of beauty, doesn't it? Even in a place as rough as the frontier. Especially here, she agreed. In the soft glow of the porch lamp, Quinn's eyes held hers. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down. Their lips met in a gentle, questioning kiss that quickly deepened as Olivia responded, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. I may not remember my past, he whispered, but I know I've never felt this way before. The simple declaration made Olivia's heart soar. Neither have I, she admitted. That night, lying in her bed, Olivia allowed herself to dream of possibilities she'd long ago set aside. When she'd come west, she'd accepted that she might never marry, that independence would be her companion. But now, with Quinn, she glimpsed a different future, one where she might have both independence and love. Yet a shadow hung over her happiness. What if Quinn's memory returned, and with it came obligations that would take him away from Mineral Point, away from her? What if he had a wife somewhere, wondering what had become of him? The thought was almost too painful to bear. The next morning, Olivia was serving breakfast to her boarders when a commotion outside drew everyone's attention. Quinn, who had been fixing a cabinet in the dining room, went to investigate. He returned moments later, his expression guarded. "There's a man asking for you, Olivia. Says he's your brother." Olivia nearly dropped the coffee pot. "My brother? That's impossible. I don't have a brother." But when she went to the door, she found herself face to face with a tall, elegantly dressed man whose features were an older, masculine version of her own. His expression, upon seeing her, was a mixture of relief and triumph. "Olivia," he said, removing his hat. "Thank God I've found you at last." "Oliver," she gasped, recognizing him despite the years that had passed. "But how? Why are you here? May I come in?" he asked, his Boston accent sounding out of place in Wyoming. "It's a long story." Olivia led her unexpected visitor into the small parlor, aware of Quinn hovering protectively nearby. "This is Quinn Keller," she introduced. "He works here. Quinn, this is Oliver Owens, my brother." "Half-brother," Oliver corrected, extending his hand to Quinn, who shook it with visible reluctance. Once they were seated, Oliver explained his presence. "Father passed away 3 months ago, Olivia. His health had been failing for some time." Olivia felt a complicated surge of emotions. Her relationship with her father had been strained since her mother's death when she was 12. His quick remarriage to his young secretary and subsequent neglect of Olivia in favor of his new family had driven the final wedge between them. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said formally. Oliver sighed. "It's your loss too, sister, and more than you might think. He left you half of everything." "What?" Olivia was stunned. "But why? He practically disowned me when I left." "He regretted that in the end," Oliver said. "He spoke often of finding you, making amends. When he knew he was dying, he changed his will. The Owens shipping business, the house in Boston, the investments, all to be divided equally between us." Olivia sat back, overwhelmed. The fortune her father had accumulated was substantial. With her share, she could do anything, go anywhere. "I've come to bring you home," Oliver continued, "to settle the estate and take your rightful place in Boston society." Quinn, who had been silent throughout this exchange, stood abruptly. "Excuse me," he muttered and left the room. Olivia wanted to follow him, but was trapped by the conversation with her brother. For nearly an hour, Oliver outlined the inheritance and the life that awaited her back east: comfort, security, status. "I need time to think," she finally said. "This is all very sudden." Oliver nodded understandingly. "Of course. I'll be staying at the hotel in town for a few days. Take all the time you need." After he left, Olivia searched for Quinn, eventually finding him in the small garden behind the house, aggressively pulling weeds. "Quinn," she said softly. He looked up, his face carefully composed. "Congratulations on your good fortune." "It's not decided yet," she said. "I haven't agreed to go back." He stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "Why wouldn't you? It's everything anyone could want: security, wealth, family." "Not everything," she countered, meeting his gaze steadily. Something flickered in his eyes: hope, perhaps, but it was quickly replaced by resignation. "Olivia, you deserve more than a life of hard work in a dusty frontier town, and certainly more than—" He gestured to himself. A man with no past, no prospects, nothing to offer but uncertainty. That's not true, she argued. You have plenty to offer. And we've been building something here, haven't we? Not just the boarding house, but between us. Quinn's expression softened. We have, and last night was. He took a deep breath. It was everything to me, but I can't ask you to choose a life with me over the security your father has provided. It wouldn't be fair. Shouldn't that be my decision? Olivia challenged, stepping closer to him. Before he could answer, they were interrupted by the arrival of Sheriff Donovan. Quinn, he called as he approached. Got a telegram you need to see. Quinn took the paper with trepidation, his eyes scanning the brief message, his face drained of color. What is it? Olivia asked, alarmed. Someone's looking for me, Quinn said, his voice hollow. A man named James Barrett from Denver says he has information about who I am. Olivia's stomach knotted with dread. This was what Quinn had been waiting for, a clue to his identity. So why did it feel like a disaster? He's coming here, Quinn continued, still staring at the telegram. Arrives on tomorrow's stage. The following day was the longest of Olivia's life. Quinn had withdrawn into himself, alternating between excited anticipation and dread as they waited for the afternoon stage to arrive. Olivia, too, felt conflicted, happy that Quinn might finally get answers, yet terrified those answers would take him away from her. Oliver came by mid-morning, pressing for her decision about returning to Boston. She put him off again, unable to think about anything but the impending arrival that might change everything. The stage rolled into Mineral Point at precisely 4 o'clock, dust billowing around the 6-horse team as the driver brought them to a halt outside the hotel. Quinn and Olivia watched from across the street as passengers disembarked, a middle-aged couple, a young man in a city suit, and finally, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with silver at his temples and the weathered look of someone who spent his life outdoors. That's him, Quinn said with certainty, though he couldn't possibly know. That's Barrett. They crossed the street together, approaching the older man as he retrieved his bags. Mr. Barrett, Quinn called. The man turned, his eyes widening as they fell on Quinn. Good Lord, he breathed. It is you. Quinn stood stiffly, his face tense. You know me. James Barrett nodded, his expression a mixture of relief and wariness. I do. You're Quentin Cavanaugh. You worked for me at the Double Bar Ranch outside Denver for nearly 5 years. Quinn, or Quentin, absorbed this information with visible shock. Cavanaugh, he repeated softly. Not Keller. Barrett shook his head. Keller, no, you've been Quentin Cavanaugh as long as I've known you. And how long is that? Quinn asked. Like I said, about 5 years. You rode in one day looking for work. Best horseman I ever hired. Barrett glanced at Olivia curiously. This is Miss Olivia Owens, Quinn introduced. She's been caring for me since I was injured. I lost my memory, don't remember anything before waking up here in Mineral Point. Barrett's eyebrows shot up. That explains why you never came back or sent word. He extended a hand to Olivia. Madam, I'm much obliged for looking after him. He's a good man, one of my best hands. How did you find me? Quinn asked. Pure luck, Barrett admitted. I've had men looking since you disappeared 3 months ago. One of them saw the description in a Kansas newspaper. Lawman there had received an inquiry from the sheriff here about an unidentified wounded man. The description matched, so I came as soon as I could. 3 months, Quinn murmured. That's how long I've been missing, Barrett nodded grimly. Since the night of the raid. Bunch of outlaws hit the ranch, looking to steal our best stock. You and some of the boys rode out to stop them. 3 men died in the fight and you vanished. We thought you might have been killed too, your body taken by the outlaws or wild animals, but we never found any trace. Olivia's mind was racing. This explained the bullet wound, but nothing else. How had Quentin traveled from Denver to Mineral Point while unconscious or delirious? And why couldn't he remember anything before the raid? I need to know everything, Quinn said firmly. Everything you can tell me about who I was. Barrett glanced at Olivia again. Perhaps we should speak privately. Quinn's hand found Olivia's. Anything you can tell me, you can say in front of Miss Owens. Something in his tone must have conveyed his feelings because Barrett smiled slightly. I see. Well, let's find somewhere comfortable to talk. It's been a long journey. They settled in the hotel dining room, where Barrett ordered whiskey for himself and Quinn and tea for Olivia. As they waited for their drinks, the older man studied Quinn carefully. You really don't remember anything? He asked. Quinn shook his head. Nothing before waking up here. Though recently I've had flashes. Familiar feelings mostly. Nothing concrete, Barrett sighed. That's a shame. You had quite a life, Quentin Cavanaugh, not all of it easy, but you made something of yourself. Over the next hour, he painted a picture of the man Quinn had been orphaned young, raised by an uncle who taught him to ride and shoot, then set adrift when that uncle died in a mining accident. He'd worked his way across the Western Territories as a cowhand, eventually landing at the Double Bar, where his skill with horses had quickly earned him a position as Barrett's head wrangler. You were saving to buy your own spread, Barrett told him. Had a good stake put aside. It's still there, waiting for you, along with your position if you want it back. Quinn listened intently, searching for any spark of recognition in the story. Occasionally he would nod as if something resonated, but mostly he remained frustratingly blank. What about family? Olivia asked. Did he have? Is there a wife? Children? The question hung heavily in the air, and Olivia held her breath waiting for the answer. Barrett shook his head. No wife, no children. Quentin kept mostly to himself, friendly with the other hands, respected by all, but private about his past. Said once that he'd left everything behind when he headed west. Relief washed through Olivia, followed immediately by shame for feeling it. What kind of person was she, to hope this man had no family waiting for him? There is one more thing, Barrett said, reaching into his coat pocket. Something that might help jog your memory. He withdrew a folded photograph and handed it to Quinn. It showed a group of men standing in front of a ranch house, all dressed in cowboy attire. Barrett pointed to a figure on the end, unmistakably Quinn, though with longer hair and a mustache. This was taken last Christmas, Barrett explained. Annual gathering at the main house. Quinn stared at the photograph, his eyes intense as if willing himself to remember the moment it captured. Slowly, his expression changed, a furrow appearing between his brows. The cabin, he said suddenly. I lived in a small cabin near the creek, away from the bunkhouse. Barrett sat forward eagerly. That's right. You preferred your privacy, so I let you fix up the old line shack by the east pasture. And there was a dog, Quinn continued, his voice gaining confidence. A black and white shepherd mix. Shadow, Barrett confirmed, grinning now, follows you everywhere. Been moping something terrible since you disappeared. Quinn's eyes were distant, seeing things beyond the hotel dining room. I remember the raid now, riding out in the darkness, gunfire. He winced, his hand going to his shoulder unconsciously. I was shot, fell from my horse, then someone hit me. He trailed off, frustrated. That's all. The rest is still blank. It's coming back, Olivia said encouragingly, though her heart was heavy. Each recovered memory was a step toward Quinn reclaiming his life and potentially leaving Mineral Point. Leaving her. Barrett stayed for 3 days, sharing more stories of Quinn's time at the Double Bar, each one triggering small flashes of memory. By the 3rd day, Quinn remembered enough to convince both himself and Barrett that he truly was Quentin Cavanaugh, even if large portions of his life remained shadowed. On the morning Barrett was to leave, he met with Quinn one last time on the boarding house porch. "I'll be heading back to Denver on the noon stage," he said. "The question is, will you be coming with me?" Quinn, who had decided to reclaim his real name, Quentin, looked troubled. "I don't know yet." Barrett nodded understandingly. "Your job is there whenever you want it. And your savings nearly $2,000, enough to make a real start." He glanced toward the boarding house where Olivia could be seen through the window, preparing breakfast. "But I can see you might have reasons to stay." Quentin followed his gaze. "I owe her my life," he said quietly. "She took in a stranger, cared for me when I had nothing to offer in return. Seems to me she might have gotten something valuable in return after all," Barrett observed with a knowing smile. When the stage departed that afternoon, Quentin stood with Olivia in the dusty street, watching it disappear around the bend. Neither spoke of the decision that hung between them. That evening, Olivia Owens came to the boarding house for supper, clearly expecting an answer about Olivia's return to Boston. The tension around the dining table was palpable as Quentin served the meal and then excused himself, leaving the siblings to talk privately. "Well," Oliver asked once they were alone, "have you decided? I need to head back east soon." Olivia pushed her food around her plate. "It's not a simple decision, Oliver. My life is here now." "What life?" he countered. "Hard work for little return in a town that will never amount to much, compared to the comfort and position waiting for you in Boston." "There's more to life than comfort and position," she replied. "I have independence here, respect for what I've built with my own hands." Oliver's expression softened. "I understand that matters to you. But you could have independence in Boston too, with Father's fortune behind you. You could do anything you wished, travel, study, support causes you believe in." It was tempting, Olivia had to admit. The kind of freedom wealth could provide was different from what she had in Mineral Point, but no less valuable. "There's something someone else isn't there?" Oliver asked perceptively. "The man who works for you, Quinn or Quentin, whatever his name is." Olivia blushed despite herself. "He's part of it," she acknowledged. "We've grown close." Oliver sighed. "A man with no memory, Olivia. How can you build a future with someone who doesn't know his own past?" "He knows now," she said. "Or at least he's beginning to remember. His former employer came and identified him." "And will he be returning to his old life?" Oliver asked. The question cut to the heart of Olivia's fears. "I don't know," she admitted. "He hasn't decided." After Oliver left, promising to return the next day for her final answer, Olivia found Quentin in the garden, sitting on a bench beneath the old apple tree. Silently, she joined him, the night air cool around them. "Your brother wants you to go back to Boston," Quentin said after a while. It wasn't a question. "Yes, you should go." His voice was controlled, but she could hear the strain beneath it. Olivia turned to face him. "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" "Of course not," he admitted, meeting her eyes in the moonlight. "These past months with you have been everything. Even without my memories, I know that what I feel for you is real and true, but I can't ask you to stay here when you have a chance at a better life." "And what about you?" she asked. "Will you go back to the double bar?" Quentin ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I don't know. Barrett says that's where I belong, and the memories that are returning seem to confirm it. But it doesn't feel like home, Olivia, not the way this place does, not the way being with you does." Hope flared in her chest. "Then stay," she whispered. "Stay with me." "And do what?" He countered. "Continue working at your boarding house, taking charity." "It's not charity," she protested. "You've more than earned your keep." "But it's not a future," he insisted. "I need to be able to offer you more than hired help." Olivia's patience snapped. "I don't need you to offer me anything, Quentin Kavanagh. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. What I want is a partner, someone to share my life with, not a provider." Quentin stared at her in surprise, then slowly smiled. "You're quite magnificent when you're angry," he observed. Despite herself, Olivia laughed. "Don't change the subject." His expression grew serious again. "You're right. I've been thinking about this all wrong. It's not about what I can give you materially. You've proven you don't need that. It's about what we can build together." He took her hands in his. "I may not remember all of my past yet, but I know what I want for my future. You, Olivia Owens, if you'll have me." Olivia's heart soared. "Are you proposing to me, Mr. Kavanagh?" "I believe I am, Miss Owens," he replied, his blue eyes warm with promise, "though I'm making a mess of it." "On the contrary," she said softly, "I think it's perfect." Their kiss was deeper this time, filled with the certainty of shared feelings and shared futures. When they finally parted, Olivia rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "What will we do?" she asked. "Where will we go?" Quentin was quiet for a moment, thinking. "What if we could have it all? Your independence, my work with horses, a fresh start for both of us." "How?" Barrett mentioned my savings, nearly $2,000, enough to buy a small ranch not far from here. "I could raise horses, which is apparently what I'm good at. You could keep the boarding house, or sell it and start something new if you wanted." His eyes were bright with excitement. "And with your inheritance, we'd have security as we build something that's truly ours." Olivia considered this vision of their future. It was appealing, a compromise that would allow them both to pursue their strengths while building a life together. "I like it," she said, smiling up at him, "but I have one condition." "Name it." "I want to be married before we start this grand adventure." Quentin's answering smile was radiant. "I think that can be arranged." The next morning, Olivia gave Oliver her decision. She would accept her inheritance but would not be returning to Boston permanently. Instead, she would send a trusted lawyer to handle the necessary paperwork and transfer of assets. "I'm building a life here, Oliver," she told her brother firmly. "With Quentin. We're getting married." Oliver looked disappointed but not surprised. "You've always been stubborn, sister. Once you set your mind to something, there was no changing it." He sighed. "I had hoped to have family close by again, but I respect your choice." "You could always visit," Olivia suggested. "See the West for yourself." "Perhaps I will," he said with a small smile. "Though I doubt I'll develop a taste for dust and discomfort." "It grows on you," she assured him, hugging him goodbye. Over the next few weeks, Mineral Point buzzed with the news of Olivia and Quentin's engagement and their plans to establish a horse ranch outside of town. Some townsfolk were skeptical a Boston heiress, and an amnesiac cowboy hardly seemed a conventional match, but most were supportive, having witnessed their growing relationship over the months. Quentin's memories continued to return in fragments. He remembered more of his childhood, a small farm in Missouri, parents who died of fever when he was 8, the uncle who raised him with gruff affection. He remembered learning to break horses, his first cattle drive, the years of drifting from ranch to ranch before finding a home at the Double Bar. There were still gaps, weeks, and sometimes months that remained stubbornly blank, but he no longer felt like a man without a past. And more importantly, he had a future to look forward to. They found the perfect property, 10 miles outside of Mineral Point, 100 acres with a small but sturdy house, a barn in need of some repair, and good grazing land, bordered by a clear running creek. With Quentin's savings and a portion of Olivia's inheritance, they purchased it outright, along with a small herd of quality mares and a magnificent stallion that Quentin selected with expert eye. The wedding took place on a crisp October morning in the town's small church. Olivia wore a simple ivory dress ordered from Denver, and Quentin looked handsome and nervous in a new black suit. The entire town turned out for the celebration that followed, and even James Barrett traveled from the double bar to wish them well, bringing with him a special wedding gift shadow, the black and white shepherd dog that had been Quentin's faithful companion. The reunion between man and dog was emotional. Shadow recognized his master immediately, nearly knocking Quentin over in his excitement, whining and licking his face with unrestrained joy. "I guess some bonds can survive anything," Barrett observed, watching the pair with satisfaction. Even when memories fail. As the wedding festivities continued into the evening, Olivia found a quiet moment with her new husband on the porch of what had been her boarding house and was now sold to a young couple from Indiana. "Happy?" Quentin asked, his arm around her waist. "Completely," she replied, leaning into him, "though I'll miss this old place. We'll make new memories in our home," he promised, "better ones." Olivia smiled up at him. "We already have so many good memories here." "True," he acknowledged. "This is where I found you, or rather where you found me, broken and empty. You gave me a place to heal, to belong. Even without my memories, I knew I was home because of you." "And now?" she asked softly. Quentin's kiss was his answer, tender and full of promise. "Now we build our future," he whispered against her lips. "Every day a new memory worth keeping." 10 years later, the Cavanaugh Ranch was one of the most prosperous in the territory. Their reputation for breeding and training superior horses had spread throughout the West, bringing buyers from as far as California and Texas. The small house had been expanded to accommodate their growing family twin boys who had inherited their father's skill with horses and their mother's determination, and a daughter whose quick intelligence and compassion reminded everyone of Olivia. Quentin's memory had largely returned, though there were still occasional gaps that he'd learned to accept as part of who he was. The raid that had nearly cost him his life remained hazy, but he'd pieced together enough to understand what had happened. Shot from his horse during the fight, he'd been found by a passing trader who mistook him for one of the outlaws. The trader had taken him along, intending to collect a bounty, but Quentin had escaped near Mineral Point, despite his injuries and confusion. The rest, as they said, was history, a history that had led him to Olivia, and the life they now shared. On the 10th anniversary of the day Quentin had ridden, wounded and unconscious, into Mineral Point, the Cavanaughs hosted a celebration at their ranch. Friends from town mingled with buyers and neighboring ranchers, enjoying the fine autumn weather and Olivia's renowned hospitality. As the sun set, casting golden light across the rolling pastures where their horses grazed, Quentin found Olivia on the porch of their home, watching their children play with Shadow's puppies in the yard. "Quite a life we've built," he observed, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Olivia leaned back against him, content, "Worth every struggle." "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Not going back to Boston. You could have had an easier life." She turned in his arms to face him. "Never, not for a single moment. Easier doesn't mean better, Quentin. What we have here, what we've built together, is everything I ever wanted." He kissed her then, still marveling after all these years that this remarkable woman had chosen him, had believed in him when he couldn't even remember his own name. "I may have lost my past," he said softly, "but you gave me a future worth remembering. Every day with you, with our children, with the life we've made, these are the memories I treasure most." As twilight deepened into night, the Cavanaugh family gathered on their porch, watching as the first stars appeared in the vast Wyoming sky. Their journey hadn't been easy. There had been droughts and harsh winters, economic downturns and personal challenges, but through it all, they had faced each day together, creating a legacy of love and resilience that would endure long after they were gone. For Quentin, who had once awakened to emptiness, And Olivia, who had once resigned herself to solitude, it was more than enough. It was everything.